What's up, Gear Mortals? Trey Xavier here. On today's edition of Gear God's Quality Control, we're going to be taking a look at what I consider to be the perfect metal pedal board, JHS Pedals edition. The idea here is that I put together what I consider to be the perfect metal pedal board. Gives you all the elements of the tones that you're going to need for two basic metal sounds. One super dry, crunchy rhythm tone, and then a pretty wet lead tone with some delay and a little bit of a volume boost. It's set up in such a way that all you have to do is step on one button to switch between the two different sounds, and that button is the effects loop of your amplifier. So I'm going to show you how I set it up, what it sounds like, and the different kinds of sounds you can get out of it. This video is sponsored by JHS Pedals, who make a ton of really great pedals. You're going to hear all of these today, but I highly encourage you to check out their other ones as well. We've got the Muffaletta fuzz that has 6 different types of fuzz in it, which you can access with this wheel. We've got the Moonshine version 2, which is an overdrive pedal, really great sounding overdrive. Then we've got the Angry Charlie version 3 here, really cool distortion pedal that's basically like a Marshall in a box type of a sound. We're using this as kind of the crux for our high gain sounds. This is where most of the tone is coming from. We've got the Pink Panther delay. It's freaking sparkle pink. This is one of the coolest looking pedals I've ever seen. It's a really versatile little delay pedal. It's got a ton of features for the size of it. Tap tempo and a couple of modulation options. Then over here we've got the Spring Tank. This is obviously a reverb spring tank. Get it? It's a spring reverb tank. Anyway, it's got this tank 1 and tank 2 option, so you can get more reverb at the push of a button. And then last but not least, we have the Prestige, which is just a very simple boost. JHS Pedals does not make a gate pedal, so I'm using this hot one, little tiny baby gate. Generally, it's also pretty important to have a tuner pedal on here. I don't have one at the moment. I'm just using the Polytune clip from TC Electronic. That's a pretty sweet clip-on tuner. You might want to consider getting yourself a pedal tuner for your board if you're putting one together. So I've put this board together in a way that makes sense for me, for what I do, and the sounds that I like. Of course, you can do it a different way, but I'm going to show you the logic behind it. That's the most important thing to me, is keeping it really simple, very functional, and easy to use. You, of course, can do it however you like, but this is how I put my boards together. I think it's very important to split your board into sort of 2 different ideas. One of them is any kind of drive pedal is going to go in front of your amp. Okay, so I've got my in front of the amp section over here. Then all your time-based effects go in the loop. So here we've got time-based effects, delay, and reverb. The boost, you're thinking, Trey, but you put the boost in the loop. You're a hypocrite, you lied. So the reason the boost is in the loop is because if you put a boost in the loop, you can actually make the sound louder. If you put the boost in front before your drive pedals, it's not going to get louder when you turn it on. It's just going to get gainier. It's going to boost into any of your gain and drive pedals or distortion pedals, and it's going to up the amount of gain, and the volume isn't going to go up at all. If you put it in the loop right in front of the power amp, you're boosting the signal up going into the power amp, and then the volume is going to go up. The guitar is going in here, and then out from here is going straight into the input of the amp, which goes right into the preamp. Then we've got stuff that goes in the loop. That stuff over here, this is coming out from the send of the loop and back into the return. Things that I think sound best in front of the amp include overdrive, fuzz, distortion, any kind of gain or drive effects. All 3 of those that I just mentioned we have on here. And then I also like to put the gate first in the chain. You can also put a gate in the loop. Some people do both. Things that go in the effects loop include things like reverb and delay, anything time-based, any kind of time-based effect that takes something that you played and plays it back. Something like an echo, like a slapback echo, any kind of delay or reverb. Definitely want to put those in the loop. Now, of course, none of this matters if you don't have a good amplifier to go into. Today, we're going into my all-time favorite, the Rev Generator 120. We are just using channel 1, the clean channel. All of our distortion sounds are coming from the board. We're kind of just using this as a pedal platform type of amp. I'm going into the 2 Notes Torpedo Captor for a load box, and we're going straight into Pro Tools, where I'm using Wall of Sound 3, and I'm loading up some cab sounds in there. Okay, here's the clean sound that we're working with. Here's just the Angry Charlie That in and of itself is already a pretty sick, heavy tone. I think this is a really great sounding pedal. We had it in our distortion pedal shootout, and it was one of my favorites. It already sounds really, really good just by itself. But that doesn't mean that there's no room for improvement. So, one of my favorite things to do, the age-old trick of using an overdrive pedal as sort of your tonal control center and to tighten up your sound. So we're going to turn on the moonshine right now. So I've got the tone up a little bit, not too high. The drive all the way down. I'm basically using it just to control the tone and to boost it a little bit. So here's what that sounds like. If you like, you can boost it even further. You can crank the volume up, get a little more gain. A really cool new feature of the Moonshine version 2 is this clean knob, which is basically a blend wet-dry knob. So if you have it all the way over here, then actually you're not getting any of the affected signal from the Moonshine. It's all dry signal. Let's say you've got the tone cranked all the way up because you want a really bright, super crunchy sound. Here's what that sounds like. Really great for low tunings, extended range guitars, etc., because you get a lot of definition out of it. But you kind of lose a little bit of body, especially in the bottom end, you know. So what you can do is blend back a little bit of the unaffected signal to get a little bit of sort of that dry tone back in. So it's still really mean, but it's also got a much cleaner bottom end. Conversely, if you wanted to just add a little bit of definition, you can kind of go the other way on the clean knob. So that's a huge variation of tone you can get out of just these two pedals in the clean channel of your amp. There are, of course, a variety of different ways you can dial these in depending on your amp, your guitar, the style of music that you're playing, all that kind of stuff. This is dialed in right now for my setup and the sound that I like. I think I've gotten this to a really solid heavy metal rhythm tone, so I'm stoked on that. Some people hate this sound. Some people who play metal or hardcore or like sludgy stuff don't really like that kind of crunchy sound. They want a fuzz type of sound. So that's why I wanted to make sure to put the muffaletta on here. I'm gonna see what that sounds like. I'm gonna go through all the different sounds the muffaletta has to offer because there's 6 completely distinct fuzz tones on here and they've all got something really cool to offer. So right now I'm using the Ditto X4 looper from TC Electronic. I'm gonna loop a riff through it so that I can adjust with my hand so that I don't have to play at the same time, which is actually a pretty neat trick if you ask me. So here we go. If you play any kind of music that requires fuzz pedal, sludge, doom, stoner rock, etc., the muffaletta has 6 different kinds of fuzz pedals inside of it. That's nuts. I would find it very hard to believe that you would not be able to find a fuzz tone in here that you would love. I think they all sound pretty awesome. I can't really decide which one I would like to use. So now we're going to go back to the crunchy kind of distortion sound that I like a lot. And now we're going to incorporate the loop. So let's say now I'm in the middle of the show. I've played my rhythm guitar parts. It's time for the solo. So the idea is that we leave everything in the loop on. All the pedals are on. You're not going to hear them until you step on the loop button, the effects loop for your amp, okay? So the idea here is to be able to get a super quick changeover from your rhythm guitar tone that's at a certain volume right to your lead guitar tone that is louder, so that you can be louder than the rest of the band because it's your solo, and with all of your time-based effects in there. So I've set the boost to such a level that it will be louder enough, and of course you're going to have to set this per your amp and all of that, and probably at the gig. I just step on the effects loop pedal, and boom, I go from one sound to the other. So let's try it out. Now the same kind of idea, but with the fuzz sound. What's really cool about this setup is that even if you only have a one-channel amp and a foot-switchable effects loop, it's kind of like now you've got 3 channels. Because if you just turn off your distortion effects and turn on the effects loop, now you've got a really great sounding clean channel with a bunch of cool sounding time-based effects on it. To play cheesy blues licks like I just did. I don't really use a ton of clean tones, but if you do, I highly recommend also adding a compressor to this, because clean tones actually get the most out of control of all the different kinds of sounds on your board, because you'd think that it would be like a distortion sound, but distorted sounds are actually already compressed. So they're a lot neater than a clean tone. Clean sounds have the most dynamic range of any kind of sound. So if you have a compressor, that'll keep you from clipping either the input of the amp or the microphone, or anything, any part of the signal chain. So now I'm gonna loop a heavy riff through the Angry Charlie pedal just to give you an idea of some of the different kinds of sounds that you can get out of it. Check it out. Now I'm going to demonstrate some of the different sounds you can get with the Moonshine, using it as a boost for the Angry Charlie, and then also just as a drive pedal on its own. Now I'm going to loop a really simple lead tone through this so that I can demonstrate some of the different things that you can do with the Pink Panther and the spring tank. Check it out. The way that I've got the board hooked up is using something that is in its most basic form called the 4-cable method. Now, of course, we've got a lot more than 4 cables going on here, but not including the little patch cables, we've got basically 4 cables. So the way that works is the input from my guitar is going into the front of the amp part of the signal chain, okay? That includes all my drive pedals, fuzz, overdrive, distortion, and of course the gate in the very front of the whole thing. Now, all that goes from cable number 2 into the front of the amp, into the preamp, the regular guitar input. So that keeps all of these in front of the amp. Then we've got two more cables. One of them comes from the effects loop out, and that goes right into my time-based effects, or my effects loop. So that goes into, right now we're going into the Pink Panther delay, into the Spring Tank reverb, and then the Prestige boost pedal, and then that goes out from there back into the effects return on the amp. So that's cable number 4. Hopefully this gives you an idea of how I like to put together a metal pedal board and all the elements that goes into it, and what I think is the best way to set it all up with your amp. Thank you so much to JHS Pedals for sending all these awesome pedals over. You can check all of them out at jhspedals.com for more information on each one of these pedals. Thank you so much for watching. If you haven't already, please hit subscribe for more reviews and original content, and I will see you real soon.